You have to use a microphone. I got one on both sides.
If I get out of your way, then you probably move over here.
Because I'll be doing so. Here, let's give that to Mike.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello. Oh, there we go.
Hello. Are we ready to get started here? Got a latecomer coming in. Got a business card, Josh?
No.
Okay, welcome to the Resolving Construction Issues Efficiently. Renee Hoekstra has been involved in partnering since 1992. She works closely with the UDOT and the AGC staff, contractors and consultants alike for the past 11 years. She brings a wealth of design and construction experience to aid teams in their improving the projects throughout improved working relationships. So welcome, Renee. Thank you.
Okay, I don't really want to use a microphone, but you can't hear anything over these other rooms. So if you guys are really unhappy with the way they set this up, please make sure that you put that on your discussions, because it's been really hard to hear in presentations. So make sure you let them know that. I understand what they're doing. So welcome, everybody. Most of you I probably know from partnering training, and I'm really glad to be here because I want to kind of take this a little further. And I was really excited about the AGC Roundtable this morning because I think you actually started the conversations that I want to get a little deeper into about how we can better solve our problems and resolve our issues, which is what this is about today. My objectives are really to understand the importance of problem solving and issue resolution to the partnering process. And really what I'm looking at is not just the workshop. We're looking at pre-workshop, partnering workshop, during the project, and then as Michelle had mentioned, some lessons learned in a closeout, some educational opportunities that we can look at, and also the project issue resolution process. As a reminder, when we do partnering, one of the things that we're supposed to talk about is issue resolution. And problem solving and issue resolution, like communication, are two of the really key critical elements for our success. And as is mentioned here, and you guys know over and over again, I'm going to keep telling you, you got to learn to communicate better, but we need open and honest communication. The real key here, and it came up again today, is price plus time, which means problem solving and issue resolution is really important that we focus on time. And it's not just about the escalation plan you are supposed to do in your partnering workshop, and you're going to see that today, but it's also focusing on other opportunities. So what we're talking about here is a process, not a one-time event, all right? So if we look at the issue resolution process, if we have an effective process, it allows our RE and our PM to resolve issues in a more timely manner, which we already talked about the criticalness of time. It encourages upper management to take an active role. We are going to talk about that though, because sometimes we step over the boundaries that we should be doing, and so we want to talk about what that role is. We also want people to start to learn how to handle standard issues and issues that happen all the time. How can we resolve them? How can we better educate the guys in the field to be able to resolve these issues and understand how to then escalate them when we do have problems, and also understanding our roles and responsibilities. And that was kind of a discussion Shane just had, that we have to know what our roles and responsibilities are, but I think just as critically, we need to know what the authorities are, not just roles and responsibilities. So what does the process look like? As I mentioned, it should occur in 4 stages. What you're looking at is pre-workshop, partnering workshop, during construction, and then closeout. What we need you to start looking at is a common sense approach to problem solving. So somebody tell me, are you born with common sense? How do you get it? On-the-job training, experience, trial and error. By the way, we do make mistakes. That's how we learn. So what we need to do, though, is we need to have more of a common sense approach. We also need to have a common understanding of all of the impacts, which means more than just time and money. There may be others, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And probably at the top of the list, even though it's at the bottom, is you have to be willing to solve problems and resolve issues, okay? So let's talk about what we do at the pre-partnering workshop. So this is stuff that we're supposed to be focusing on. You guys need to start understanding what our issues and our concerns are before we ever get started. Take the time now. We've got the tools. You need to use them. We talked about risk-based partnering. You have an opportunity to look at the risk register and figure out how to better handle that. Are we going to get into a screaming role? I'm thinking I can win here. You know what I mean? These guys, that's all they're doing is just adjusting volume, trying to figure out how to deal with that. We also need to understand the issues from everyone's perspective. Now, there's somebody missing from this list: contractor, UDOT, consultant, and design. The public, which I kind of slide in with UDOT because you guys are the ones that are going to get the phone calls, believe it or not. But again, we have to understand the way that we solve our problems and we resolve our issues. How is everybody impacted? How does that included? We also need to look at more than just technical issues. The problem is that tends to be the thing we know how to do best, because you guys are great problem solvers. But we have to figure out the other things that are impacted. So maybe there are contractual issues, especially when I get into incentive bonuses, CMGC, design build. There's other issues within our contracts. It could be environmental, it could be public, it could be a number of other things that we need to look at. So it can't just be our technical issues. We also need to make sure that we're beginning to formulate preliminary plans now. If we wait until we're standing over the grade when we run into a problem, what gets impacted? Time, money, frustration, because why didn't we start talking about this early on? We also need to make sure that the goal here is this: reducing issues in the field. The only way we're going to reduce our issues in the field is by understanding them and putting plans together when? Before you get in the field, all right? But the only way we're going to do that is if we share. You have got to let me know what your issues are, what your concerns are, what are you seeing in the plans and specs that is an issue, what are you seeing in the bid documents, I don't care what it is. We need to figure out what it is that is going to be a problem. Now, when I was doing the phase 3 training, I had somebody literally put on the website that they saw a failure in partnering because the contractor came to the partnering workshop with a change order list. I said, what? What is that? Well, it was perceived as a change order list because the owner, the contractor, came with his issues and his concerns. And our perception was that, oh, here we go the change orders. And that's not what it was. This was a way to educate. So our response to some of this stuff impacts our effectiveness. So we need to realize it's not a change order list. It's educating one another what our issues and our concerns are ahead of time. We also need to make sure that we're all being open, honest, and upfront with one another. Holding back is not going to help us. It is not going to make this any better. I promise you, it is going to make it worse. So we need to figure out how to be more open and honest with each other about what those impacts are. And again, as we talked about, the roles, responsibilities, and authorities, we need to understand those. Now, what we also need to identify, which I don't think we're doing a good job, and guys, and part of this is very, very much related to UDOT, because I have a very young staff. So what we're finding across the board is inexperienced staff at any level. And I don't care whether that's a construction manager for a consultant, I don't care if it's on UDOT or it's the contractor. But we need to look at how to help, not hinder, and make you better at what you do. Well, my executives first off need to admit it. I got young guys out there. Now, why would they not maybe want to admit this? They get a young RE out there, not a lot of construction experience. Why may they not, or the PM is really young, not a lot of experience. Why wouldn't I want to admit that? What is my worry? Right, we're worried that our teammates are going to take advantage of us. Okay, that would be nuts. That doesn't make good partnerships. So really what we need to do is figure out, guys, we need to admit it, and then management should really meet and discuss, how do I work together to figure out how to educate these guys on being better problem solvers with not a lot of experience? Because again, without experience, I don't have common sense, right? So what ends up happening is what we need to do is get together ahead of time and say, what are some of the issues and what are our expectations of management of this young staff to figure out how we can get them to succeed. I would also suggest that the RE and the PM meet and talk about how to help each other learn. Now the challenge with this goes to what we just said. You've got to have very, very, very open and honest communications, and there's got to be trust. Because I have to trust that you are not going to slap me upside of the head because I don't have as much experience. Now, I had a senior RE at ADOT many moons ago who had every opportunity. The project manager for the contractor in the middle of the project changed his project manager and brought in his young son with not very much experience. The senior RE for ADOT could have very easily have taken him and eaten him for lunch. He realized, however, that we need to get a project done, so his goal became, I'm going to take him under my wing, and I'm going to help him through to understand what you need to be doing, not how do I take advantage of it. And those are the things and the opportunities that we can cross over, but internally we also need to look at making sure that if I have inexperienced staff, that I'm, as an executive management person, giving them the support to make sure that they feel comfortable. Otherwise, this is what happens. All of our approaches and answers become black and white interpretations. Do it per plans and specs. Do it per plans and specs. How many of you realize that those plans and specs are perfect? Yeah, not so much. Doesn't exist. So if every time an interpretation, but I can't answer any other way if I don't have the experience, and we wonder why we're frustrated. So upper management, you have a really huge role here, and you need to start stepping up and making sure that we're looking at this. So now let's move into the partnering workshop, because you have roles and responsibilities during the workshop. You have a plan. Develop it and use it, which means at every partnering workshop, your issue escalation plan that you all learned in Partnering 101, that I trained you, I know you were there, I recognize many faces here. You guys need to be developing that plan. You also need to commit, and the really big word here is how to use it. Because I think our biggest problem is we'll put the plan together and then nobody looks at it. They don't deal with it. So you need to commit to timeframes, and what's more importantly, when you do commit to timeframes, you need to hold each other's feet to the fire. You cannot let each other off the hook. Okay, it's really important. And you cannot use the plan as a weapon against your partners. Just because you don't like mom's answer doesn't mean you get to run to dad. And sometimes that's what we do. And that does not build a good relationship. So you need to also use it effectively, which means you guys have the rules to escalation. Read through them, remind your team members what those rules are, and make sure that you use the plan. You also need to define what does it mean to agree to disagree. We're not really good at this either, because we're taking it personal. Well, geez, Josh, if you liked me, you'd agree with me. Yeah, no, that has nothing to do with it. It really is about how we're resolving our differences. So you need to figure out with your team during your workshop, what are the trigger points? How do we know we are at impasse and we need to escalate it? You have to talk about that for every team. It can't be just, follow the plan. Well, what does that mean? So, and part of it has to do with authorities, and we'll get to that. The key here is unresolved issues erode relationships. As much as I know you guys hate me talking about that ugly R word, and I don't mean Renee, which sometimes can be ugly, is that relationship is the key to your success or your failure. So you cannot hold on to issues, and they can't stay unresolved for such a long period of time that we start to impact that relationship negatively. So if I have low levels of experienced staff and I have a highly complex project or impact is very high, whether that's public or environmental, don't really care, but if I've got really high impact, upper management needs to get involved, except as a mentor. You are not doing it for them. So I have any control freaks sitting in this room? That would be our problem. We have what we call seagull management. You guys are familiar with that? You know what that means? Management flies in, eats all your food, craps on your project, and then leaves. That would be known as seagull management. Not allowed. So the point is you guys have a role. So what you need to do is you need to review the weekly meeting minutes, because you should have a list of outstanding issues. And on that outstanding issue, if it does not exist, it needs to exist now. When did the issue start? Who is responsible for getting it resolved? And when is the promised date for resolution? And if you are starting to see issues not getting resolved, that is your opportunity to do this. Ask probing questions. And now this is Renee's ask, don't tell policy, not to be confused with the military's, which means you ask questions, you do not tell your way or what they should be doing. You need to look at how do I help educate them. Doing it for them doesn't help them. But if you don't get involved and make sure that our issues are getting resolved, because if they don't have a lot of experience, they don't realize the negative impact that this is causing. So you need to be a part of the solution and help your guys learn. If an issue has remained unresolved too long, you need to step in and you need to say, hey, is there anything I can help with? Not why the heck isn't this done? Because all that's going to do is create a negative response. But you need to be very careful. You have empowered your people to make decisions and solve problems. Do not circumvent them by changing their mind for them or doing things differently. In management, we have a tendency to do that. Not only is that bad for your people, it is bad for your stakeholder staff who are a part of this. Because if you continually change your RE's mind or decision, there's going to be huge ramifications later on. So again, you have a role to be a mentor and to help. But the goal that we should be focusing on is no negative impact to the project. I don't care what that's defined as. You guys have established goals, but you need to make sure that our focus is on not negatively impacting the project, the way we solve problems or the way we resolve our differences. Also, what I also tell you guys to do, roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Figure them out. Talk about it at each level. Who can change the contract? Who can change the plans and specs? Who can change the time issue? Who can provide additional time? It's really important that we understand that. And you need to talk about impacts to the schedule with Press Plus Time, the T&M approach, verbal commitments. We'll talk about what that means, because here's where I've had a problem with people in problem solving. They're having a conversation. You're trying to solve a problem. Somebody says, well, you know, what about, have you tried? Contractor goes out and does it, doesn't work. What ends up happening? Somebody says, oh, but that was the direction of work, now you owe me. So one of the things that you need to decide as a team is what constitutes a direction of work. And I would tell you, if it's not in writing, it's not a direction of work. And until we start admitting that to one another and what that means, we are going to continue running into a problem with each other. So look at those verbal conversations and those verbal commitments. It's not a direction of work, all right? But help solve problems and resolve issues. Those are part of your partnering values that you guys talk about. How do we make sure we continue to embrace those values? Also look for traditional, and I'm glad Michelle brought this up because I think this is really good, Look for traditional and non-traditional opportunities to bring up issues. Review the baseline schedule. You're having pre-activity meetings for normal stuff. I want you to start having other types of pre-activity, non-traditional pre-activity meetings where we get to talk about, okay, how are we going to inspect this? Mr. Inspector, what are you looking for? Mr. Contractor, how are you going to build it? Let me understand your phasing. Let me understand how you're going to build it. Let's sit down and have these conversations ahead of time so that we can discuss the expectations and not be frustrated later. But again, we have to have that open and honest discussion of the work that needs to get done. So we need to have those conversations. So what this means is it's a more proactive versus a reactive approach to problem solving. We have to spend more time. And you still have a great opportunity because the partnering workshop, we haven't really started work. We're not cranking, so let's figure out how to make that better. So now let's go into the project. Effective problem solving is about getting to understanding. How do we get to understanding? You guys have all been through my class. In order to understand, we have to communicate. Thank you. Somebody wins a prize. So we have to communicate to get to understanding. It's the only way. What we need to look at is what information is available from all of our stakeholder partners, UDOT, designers, contractors, subcontractors, because these might be subcontractor issues. So we need to make sure all of our information is available. And this doesn't mean just plans and specs. It means impacts, expectations, needs, requirements. It's not just about the black and white. It's the other stuff that ends up getting us in trouble when we're talking about problem solving because we make assumptions. And I need to get the assumptions made out of the picture and try to figure out how to avoid that. So issue resolution is about education, not about taking sides, adversarial behaviors, which means I'm going to fight because I like to fight, because most of you don't like to fight, I can tell you that. And it's not about coercive behaviors, which means do it my way or the highway, which gets into my problem with black and white interpretations, because that's the only way anybody can look at it because they don't have the experience. So again, we need to figure out how to help educate. It's also, issue resolution is about asking questions to understand. All of you guys went through the communication training in phase 2, and that was about getting rid of you statements and talking more about I statements. Understand everything that's going on and what the impacts are. So a key priority has to be about time. We cannot ignore this, and what really is frustrating, and it's not as bad in Utah because of the price plus time issue, believe it or not. Everybody realizes how critical time is from the standpoint of the impact on the contract. In other agencies that I work with, not so much. So we're kind of having a challenge, but one of the things that you need to talk about, and you always need to say is there an impact to the schedule? It can't just be about money. We also have to talk about the impact to schedule, right? Again, we want to reduce negative impact and not let our issues pile up. Now, the challenge here is that it's not usually at my site level. It's once we escalate up into management because we're spread really thin. But you have to realize that your lack of ability to get together and resolve an issue that's been escalated is impacting the project negatively. And so we need to, again, integrate you as a part of this. As I continue to state, each issue should stand on its own merit, should stand alone. Please don't try to merge these things together. And I would suggest that the RE and the PM should drive the job together to understand issues. And how often you need to do that, you guys need to figure that out, and I would tell you to talk about it at your workshop. But that drive is a great opportunity to really understand issues. You also might want to consider a 10-10 approach. The first 10 minutes of the project is to get together and talk about what we're going to do today, what's going to happen, to educate each other. The last 10 minutes is at the end of the job to say, all right, it didn't really work like I thought it was going to work today. This is what did happen. Let's kind of get caught up in where we are. And it's a really nice thing for the RE and the PM to do. It's even really good if you look at like the inspectors and the superintendents, doing that 10-10 really gets to educate people and even talk about what's going to happen the next day. Quarterly executive meetings, I would tell you, you should be doing these whether informally or formally. Don't wait until escalation. It's not a really good time to meet your partners when you guys are in crosswise with one another. So if you guys can commit to start having executive meetings now, a lot of my PM and my RE and my other staff don't really like executive meetings. Does anybody know why? Out of curiosity? They don't really want to admit if there's problems going on. But that's not good, because they're the ones, if it ends up getting escalated, that we do need to make sure we get involved. So I would suggest that the way you do this is at those quarterly meetings, the RE and the PM get together and do a project update to the execs. It's a nice little presentation of where we are and how we got here. Also identify issues that the executives just need to know are out there that you're working on, so that things aren't a surprise. And are there any issues the executives you need help with that they need to be a part of? It's a really great conversation to integrate with your executives. And I would suggest that you guys drive the site separately with your RE and PM, so that you get to see the site and the reason decisions are made. We've had management driving through a project site, didn't like what they saw, went back, got on the phone, called the RE, yelled at them for something they have no idea about what happened, why the decision was made, and why it's there. That is not good. So again, if you drive the job with your guys, understand what's going on and how it got there. Also use the escalation plan. You know the drill, use it. These are the same things that I tell you. Are you empowered to make the decision? If not, get rid of it and escalate it. It's not about getting your way, which we already talked about. Establish the right timelines and follow them. Please do not be afraid to use the plan. If you use it effectively, we will keep things moving positively along. It will also help us understand impact. Remember what we talked about with impact. It's not just about money and time. There are other impacts that could be a part of this. So one of the things that I need you to think about, for you to talk about at your workshops, are what is your biggest escalation challenge, and figure out how to fix it. It's one of those things that we really need to make sure, again, it's resolving the issues, keeping them on track, so that we get them managed in a timely manner and get them to formal or final resolution. All right? You should have separate escalation meetings. They should not be combined with the project meetings. We've already talked about that. You need to come prepared to the meetings, which means you need to have the data, the facts. If it's a plan, if it's a spec, I don't care what it is, you need to be prepared. When I have you guys do the negotiation stuff and do the phase 2 training, the biggest challenge that you found out is that it's hard to resolve and come up with a solution when we don't have the facts. You can't make them up as you go along, even though sometimes that's been known to happen. You need to make sure that we understand what those facts are. But escalation meetings have another purpose. It's a great opportunity to learn to listen. Sometimes we're so busy talking that we are not paying attention. And if we don't listen, we don't understand, all right? It's also an opportunity to practice good problem-solving skills, which means getting to understanding, asking probing questions, coming up with a plan, and determining how to implement the plan. I think that's part of our challenge, is once we do agree, it's not getting followed through, or it's not getting followed through timely, which creates a problem. And it's about practicing good negotiation skills. Not that you're negotiating dollars. It's what I've told you all over and over again in our training. How do I get you to see it my way? That's what negotiation's all about. It's how can I convince you that there's a really good reason why I need this to be the way it is. But again, you cannot do negotiation without communication. It's not going to happen. I have a problem with that. communication thing. You notice? Everything is related to communication. As Shane said at lunch, got a bunch of engineers in the room. Guys just don't like to talk. You know, I'll be more than happy to send you an email or a text, but I'd rather really not talk to you if I don't have to. We can't resolve our differences, guys. We just need to figure out identifying those opportunities to have, you know, more communication. The escalation meeting, as we continue on escalation, is the level escalating the issue should be present so that they can present their issues to each other, so that we understand that that's the best way to understand at the next level. The level escalating the issue should adequately answer questions, which means you need, remember what I said about being prepared? Real hard to answer questions if you're not prepared. So when you're escalating the issue, you need to be prepared. Then the level escalating the issue should go away. I sat in on an escalation meeting many moons ago for an ADOT project. And the project manager for the contractor was so attached to this issue. It was my little pit bull issue. You know, he wasn't letting go. He was so disruptive at that escalation meeting that I finally had to tell him to go, because he just couldn't stop saying, hey, actually he called his partner a liar, but that's not a good thing either. Because that's the way he saw it. I mean, that's the way they understood whatever happened. In his mind, the whole thing was a lie. But I would almost guarantee you that there wasn't a lie going on. What happened was a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. It really wasn't what we had agreed to, even though we thought it was what we had said that we agreed to. You guys all know that game, okay? And then, that level, it's time. Make the darn decision and figure out where to go from here. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have time and you don't commit to going away to maybe you need additional information, maybe you need additional data to help understand, and that's fine. But again, I think our biggest problem and the complaints that I'm hearing across the industry is make the darn decision. That's where we're having a problem. I mean, the guys in the field are going, I don't care what the solution is, just somebody tell me what to do. I got guys standing here and the equipment's not moving because I don't have a decision. So understand how important it is for your guys at those different levels to get a decision. I just want one. And then let's figure out where to go from there, all right? Then I would also tell you that we need to do a lessons learned meeting, which means internal to the contractor staff. So if there's a contractor sitting here, I would suggest that your executives sit down with your guys and say, okay, let's talk about what happened and how it happened. Same thing internally with UDOT. Again, we're trying to educate each other on issues that get escalated, why they get escalated, why we should look at approaching them differently. We need to figure out how to educate internally. And you may even want to do it cross purposes. You might want to have the whole team together to talk about how the issue arised? Is that arised? That's a new word for me. Arose works better. Okay. But again, let's maybe do it jointly and understand what caused the issue. How can we avoid the issue in the future? See, that's one of my biggest issues and concerns. You know, when I talk to the groups in Phase 2 training, we talk about what are the problems that we continually see on UDOT projects. And we make a list of those problems. But they keep happening on every job. Why aren't we trying to fix this? One of them came up earlier this morning. Do we have utility problems on projects? Never. Always. Why aren't we talking about these pre-partnering? Now, mind you, guys, you know, as was said, our utility guys are a little overtaxed. They got a lot of extra projects, they've got a lot of stuff they need to do, and they don't have the staff either. So what are our options? Maybe what we need to start considering is what we've done in other states, and we have corporate partnering sessions between the utilities. And we establish the plan that says, how are we going to handle these issues? Now, with the railroad, a little more difficult, because you can't find those guys. Yeah, it's just, when you have prior rights, it is what it is, right? They show up when they show up. But again, if we can try to make those problems internal to our own project, maybe we can do something different. But if you don't talk about them, guys, at your partnering session, you know what the project issues are going to be. It's the same ones. And that schedule one is really big. You know, what can we do differently? But you have to actually be willing. That goes back to that willingness to solve problems. We have to be willing to sit down ahead of time and not wait for it to hit the fan and figure out how to resolve those problems, okay? And then again, the reason that we do this is to help you guys learn. That's the only way we're going to get better organizationally, and our projects are going to get better, is if we help each other, especially if we don't have a lot of experience, okay? I love these, and I think there's some really great opportunities. If you guys are struggling on specific technical type issues, I don't care what it is. It could be ABC, it could be MSE Wells, it could be whatever you guys have struggled with. Why don't we have some joint contractor UDOT designer brown bags when we know that there's a specific type of project issue that's going to come up on the project? Let's get together and do like a joint training session to train our inspectors what they're inspecting, to train the contractors to understand what the inspectors are going to be inspecting and how we're going to build it. There may be some really great opportunities here to just, and we're not calling it issue resolution. What you're looking at is calling it joint training. Let's understand this. Let's figure out if this is a new means and methods. We want to do something different. Look for a way to, again, educate and increase everybody's knowledge. And I think that will help us when we're trying to solve problems and resolve issues. So close out of the project. If we don't look back at what we did, what we keep doing is the same thing over and over again. And by the way, isn't that the definition of insanity? Right? You keep doing the same thing over and over again, but you expect different outcomes? I'm really not getting that. Now, why don't we do a lessons learned? Why don't we do a closeout? Any idea? You're sick of it and you're ready to move on. I don't want to look at it again. Well, potentially that's a true statement. Why else don't we want to look at it? See, and that's a huge issue. I'm already committed to another job that's getting ready to start in 2 weeks, and I've not even had a chance to look at the plans yet. So I don't have time to look back and say, how did we do? So the only thing I can tell you is we better figure out how to do this, or if you wonder why these issues and these problems keep reoccurring, because we don't ever stop to fix them. And we just, and we look at it and say, oh yeah, well, it is just what it is. Let's just, you know, what the heck. We'll just deal with it again next time. Why do we do that to ourselves? Stop it. So what I want you to do is, I want you to plan on doing a lessons learned before the job is over. Now, mind you, on your really short jobs, you're done before you start. You know, you got 120 days, you're blowing and going, yeah, it doesn't work as much. But your longer jobs, I would tell you 90 days before the job's supposed to end, somebody schedule a lessons learned and invite all the parties. It could be in place of one of your project weekly meetings, I don't care. But sit down and go, how did we do? Look at your goals. Look at changes, because by the way, every project has them. Why did we have changes? What can we do differently on future projects? And how might we look at those differently? Look at escalation. Did we escalate our issues timely? Did issues sit out too long before being resolved to the point where we were starting to get angry with one another? I don't want you to go there. How did we do with our problem solving? Were we proactive or was everything reactive? If it was reactive, why? Is it something we could have done pre-partnering, partnering workshop, or is it just, by the way, stuff happens? Because guys, we think we know what's in the ground, but we never do. So you're gonna have those issues. But it's the ones that keep happening over and over again that I know you can work on. That I want you guys to work on it. I want you to make the problems go away. Because guys, oh my God, I've been doing the training for 10 years. I asked the same question for the last 10 years. What are the same reoccurring projects? And I keep hearing the same ones. Right away. Callie's standing back here now. I can blame her. How many of you guys have had those projects where you start the project and UDOT looks at you and says, oh, by the way, you can't start on the north end, you have to start on the south. Because I don't have permits. Or the utilities are not out of the way. These are things we should be talking out before we ever get started. Let's figure out if there's some other things that we can do to make this work. And I know you're talking about doing it in design too, because I think that whole design process where we solve problems is a great place to solve them as well. But also implementation, which means how did we implement the problems that we solved? Did we implement them timely? Did they get implemented at all? How did we do with our issue resolution process? And again, that goes back to looking at those improvements to improve future projects, but just as importantly are those future relationships. Because I think it's a real key piece that we really should be talking about, okay? So, kind of in conclusion, but they'll probably, does anybody know what time it is? How much time do I have here? Everybody looks for their phone. Do we actually? Okay, so I still got some time. So we can, huh? I'm out of time? Come on, Alan. So some of the things that I want you to think about. This isn't anything new, because by the way, the paper, which by the way, guys, there's a paper that's a position paper that I wrote. This paper, which is this presentation, does anybody know how long ago I actually wrote it? 18 years ago. And we're still having the same problems. This is stuff that I saw a lot, and it was actually before UDOT actually got into formal partnering. Rather interesting, but in that discussion, we were up in Snowbird, I think. Is that where we used to have the conference? So we were up in Snowbird, and Tom Smith was here, Tom Warren was here, and Tom Leholm was here. I decided that when I first started working with UDOT that my name needed to be Tom, because everybody's name was Tom at that point in time. But I was sitting in the crowd, and Tom Warren was trying to bring partnering to UDOT. And this was rather hysterical. Because I'm sitting in the crowd, and there was an RE meeting that was going on, and all of a sudden Tom Smith looks at me and goes, hey, Renee, can you come up here and talk to my REs about partnering? So I got up, and I had this conversation, and you have watched a crowd of guys look at me like, you're an idiot. I swear. And what I heard mumbling through the crowd was, she just doesn't understand. She doesn't understand what we do. How the heck is that possible? Well, we've come a long way, baby, believe it or not. And a lot of it is because I think organizationally, and that means the AGC, the various construction companies, and UDOT, and our consultants, are striving towards accomplishing the things that we said were really important. A lot of the things when you talk about organizationally that Carlos talked about and Shane talked about, but what I'm trying to get you to do is bring it down to a project level, because some of the things that they talk about are really up here at the 10,000 foot level. I want you guys to take it into the field, and I want you guys to feel empowered to be good problem solvers. And if you don't know or you don't understand, our biggest thing that we need to start doing is saying, I need help. Without being worried that my partner is going to kick me in the teeth for it or take advantage of me because I don't know. But until I feel that trust and I feel that comfortable, I'm never going to say it. So again, let's look for those opportunities to really figure out how do we become better educators. How do we become better mentors? How do I help the guys in the field do what they need to do effectively? And I'm not saying you're not going to mess up or we're going to make a wrong decision. Welcome to being human. But that's how we learn. And then we figure out how to change it in the future, and we don't beat each other up for making a mistake. So just remember that we have come a long way with partnering. We still have a ways to go. I still have a few of you who don't believe it. You're still that old RE from however many years ago that was, because I'm dating myself and I really don't like to do that. But we've come a long way as it relates to embracing partnering, making partnering a part of our lives and realizing how key and critical it is, but understand those tools are good for us. It's an opportunity for us to continue on that roadway to having good working relationships, both internally and externally. You know, we need to focus both of those. That mentoring is really, really key and critical, and I've always said that about Utah. You guys are, you know, it's fun to see a really young staff. Well, not you, Alan. You're with me, you're just getting old. But it's nice to see a young staff and guys that really are excited about this. You know, when I see them leave the workshop, you know, the training sessions for phase 1 and 2, they're actually excited about partnering. So our goal is how do we keep them excited? How do we keep them looking at this as an opportunity? And you need to administer the problem solving and issue resolution process correctly. It is a process. It's not just an escalation plan. It's not just doing a partnering workshop. It's during the workshop, during the project, and then closing it out. Let's do a lessons learned. If we can do that, we are going to minimize stress and frustration on the project. Again, what I say to you guys in each of my training classes is I know you're not here for the big bucks. It's not why you're here. You enjoy what you do. Let's continue to make it as stress-free as possible where we have control. There's certain things that we don't have control over. We want to create empowerment. Talk to your people about their authority levels. What can I do? Train them on issues and resolution of issues so they don't need to escalate. Look for those opportunities. If you do that, we are going to build long-term and lasting relationships, which are critical in Utah. You guys are focusing on long-term relationships, and that's what I think is really important. We have to continue to focus on those. We also need to continue to improve communication. Not an important aspect for me. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Can't do it enough. And no, it's not because I like to talk. You guys know this. The less communication builds potentially an atmosphere of non-trust, whether you believe it or not, even though it has something to do with it, but I think we build more of it into it than we need to. And what we're really looking at here, guys, is our program delivery. Delivering our projects the way that we said that we need to deliver them. We want them to be safe. We want them to allow us to be financially successful. We want quality jobs that last, because as ADOT, life cycle is important. You guys have to live with these things for a very long time. And so we really want to look at making sure that we don't negatively impact each other. So it really is, you know, it doesn't come down to winning. Strength does not. It's the struggles that we need to understand and get through to understand that it's what's going to build success. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Anything we want to talk about? Because I do have a drawing that we're going to do. For those of you who got your card, and did anybody miss? Or a piece of paper or something? Since I didn't have a booth. Go ahead, Mike, I'll let you pick. I need 3. And what I have is $10 gift certificates. I have Brittany. All right, Brittany. Applebee's it is. Who else do I have? Somebody else picked? Well, he can't pick his own card. Bridget. Or is it Brigitte? Really? Lisa? Anderson? Lisa will take it for Brigitte, and we thank you. Okay, Burger King, Applebee's. No Burger King. And I have Grant Smith. It was a latecomer, no less. There you go. All right, again, guys, there's my papers. I printed a bunch of them, so if anybody wants just the additional. There's also some of my newsletters up here, which are about being a team and all the ways teams are important to the things we do, project management, value engineering, partnering, those kinds of things. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I'm speaking at the next booth at 3:05 if anybody wants to talk about alternative delivery.